Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Andrew Bartolotta. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making an impact, empowering the good in our community and around the globe. Today, we're talking with social media brand strategist, portrait photographer, and LinkedIn consultant, Sandy Adams, as she discusses how she helps individuals and businesses stand out from their competition and turn their story into a brand. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're quite welcome. It's fun. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how our relationship, how we connected through LinkedIn.
Yes.
So power to show that it really does work.
That's right.
But before we dive into personal branding and social media, you have an impressive career spanning decades, being a portrait photographer, award-winning, and volunteer with the American Heart Association. What inspired you to pursue a career in brand strategy, and talk about leading into today's work?
So really, it's the combination of all of that. In 2010, I had been doing photography just a little bit, and the job that I was at, and I was married at the time, and we had a business and it went under, and it gave me that opportunity to just try photography. And I really had to start marking myself. And what I learned early on was that people are not hiring you because you're the best photographer. They're hiring you because they see an experience, they see a story. And how at that time, when I was living in Houston, how do I compete? I had one camera and one lens. How do I compete with these studios? And I just decided to not compete with them. I'd always had a love of Vogue magazine, Vanity Fair magazine. I'd always had a love of that magazine style, paparazzi style portraits. And so I just decided to go that route. I didn't have a studio. I could only shoot outside, really. And so I just turned it around and made it an experience. But what I learned along the way was I didn't have money for marketing. Facebook was just kind of starting. YouTube was kind of catching on. And so I used those two platforms. I created a blog on WordPress, and I just started creating stories about the photo shoots. And from there, I just saw that people resonated with those stories. It was more interesting to them to see a story around several pictures than to just go into a photography studio and have a couple of portraits made against a backdrop. And it was an experience in person, but I pulled that into my online blog posting, my Facebook stories, my YouTube videos. I created behind the scenes videos and did a story about the whole day and the whole experience. And so from that moment on, I just became more and more aware that me doing that branded myself with kind of more of a title, more of a look to myself. And so I realized that I had to step away from the camera too. I had to be in front of it more. I had to market myself more. But I just started thinking about what is it that I want to portray? And I really fell in love with Chanel. I love their ads. I love the whole look, Coco Chanel's, her contrast of black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And my shoots are a contrast of elegance and nature. So I had the gritty with the elegance. And so that's really what started it off. And it wasn't intentional. It was just a way to, hey, I've got to figure out how to market myself with no money. And that really is what started that.
I love that story, because what I've understood through interviewing multitude of people is that creativity really flourishes and expands through adversity. And so when you talk about 2010 and the economy in 2010, it was a lot there, as we're sort of seeing it now as well. And so being able to then take that opportunity to dabble into that creativity and say, I'm going to go full force, not only dabble, but just go full force and see what I can do. And then understanding through your work, your personal brand to know that, yes, I'm a little bit Coco Chanel and nature, and I've got the gritty, and I've got the high contrast and stuff like that. And there's power in knowing your personal brand. How would you personally define personal branding, and what is your approach like for working with clients that differs from others in the industry?
So my approach is, or my definition of it, it's really your reputation. And it's what people think or say about you when you're not in the room or before you get in the room. And, anything that somebody says, even when you looked at my profile yesterday, you had an immediate thought in your head as to who I was. And so how I bring that approach today is that I have clients that have different backgrounds. They have different purposes. A lot of my businesses, they may be real estate, they may be basketball, they may be a nonprofit of some kind. And so I look at what they are and I create the visual and the text, the verbiage that kind of matches a look is really kind of, and I say look with quotation marks because it's also the written word as much as it is the visual word.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. The narrative is just as important, if not even more so in certain cases than the visual there. And you did mention that we just connected on LinkedIn,
Yeah,
which
we
is
did.
which we'll talk about a little bit later. But when you talk about a personal brand, it's important to have a community calling card, which is what we say at City Current, or two where people go, oh, that's Sandy's super passionate about X or Y outside her daily work, or an extension of, which I saw on LinkedIn yesterday. So just by viewing your profile and know you're passionate about being a volunteer with the American Heart Association and the University of Memphis men's basketball team and the work that you're doing with that, talk about the importance of one, having those community calling cards, and two, how it amplifies your personal brand.
So if I talk about those calling cards, the best thing I ever did was get involved with the Heart Association. And I actually started in Memphis. My mom had an emergency triple bypass in 1996. And I was working for a trucking company called Intermodal Cartage, which is still here in the Memphis. They're headquartered in Collierville. And we had a lady come by and she wanted us to do the heart walk with them. And I'd already been doing volunteer work with some of my friends. They'd worked for United Way and some other little organizations. And I was like, well, my mom she has heart disease. So I think this is a good way. And at the time, truck drivers actually have a high rate of heart disease. And so I got involved with that and I just loved it. When I moved to Houston, I got back involved. And that's when Go Red for Women, the whole campaign designated towards women's health, had been created. And so I really got involved in Houston. I spent 10 years photographing as a volunteer for the Go Red for Women campaign in Houston and just loved it. I got to meet so many people. And for me, because as a photographer, I got a lot of kickback from other photographers that are like, why do you shoot for free? And I'm like, well, I'm volunteering my services. I believe in this campaign. I see how my mom's health is affected every time she has a procedure. I see all the women that our mission has helped save. And to me, it was a great combination. The best thing I could tell for any business or individual is to work for a nonprofit. Find some nonprofit you have a passion about and volunteer, because even on your lowest days, it makes you feel good when you can help others. And so that just became, especially in Houston, it just became a part of my brand. And it actually helped raise my publicity because of my work with the Heart Association. And so that it just became a part of my brand in so many ways.
Yeah, and skills-based volunteerism is so beneficial for the organization. They could shell out thousands of dollars for a photographer, or even, pay you thousands of dollars to take these photos. And for you to say, I'm really passionate about it. I have a skill set that you need, and I can use my services to volunteer and give back for over a decade. That is saving them so much time and money and effort. And then to also amplify you as a brand as well. So it's a win-win for organizations to really interweave your passion with your business and a nonprofit that could really use your help. So
and I'm also shooting for the Heart Association here in Memphis now. I contacted them as soon as I knew I was moving back. And so I photograph the Women of Impact for them every year now.
That is incredible. So you're doing work nationwide when it comes to helping the American Heart Association. That's so cool. Now, balancing authenticity with creating a strong brand can be challenging. Can you share some tips on how to achieve this balance and why it's important?
So, I hear people talk all the time. They don't want to be on video because they're like, I look weird. I don't talk right. I'm going to mess up. I have to edit it out. And what I said is, one, just start, but two, I don't go back and watch my videos. And there are days, I did a video yesterday. I hadn't done one in a couple of months live. And I just felt like I was rambling, and I started to delete it. And I was like, no, because I think it's important for people to see that you're not perfect, because to me, perfection doesn't draw the person in. I think when people can relate to you in some way, then I think that makes it a little bit more authentic. I don't always wear professional type clothing. I might have a Memphis t-shirt on one day, or, I might be dressed in a suit type thing today. But I think it's important to just show those different parts and be real in conversations. The past 6 months, I've talked about how I've had a lot of anxiety. I don't like the winter time. I had a friend that passed away in December. And so I talked about weekly about, the challenges that we have as humans. And so I bring that, the mindset, the motivation, that I bring that into my brand as well, because I think it's important. Everybody goes through that. And so that's kind of how I add to that authenticity, is just being real about the struggles that we all have every day.
I think it's so great to see authenticity really shine through personal branding lately. Since the pandemic, people being more vocal about behavioral
Yes.
and mental health, that
Yes.
is really important. On when I speak to nonprofits about personal branding or branding for them, I sort of give like an 80-20 rule when it comes to my personal brand on LinkedIn specifically, because it's more businessy.
Right.
I'll do 80%, tips and tricks and radio show interviews and whatnot. And then 20% maybe a quote that I really needed to hear, and some narrative and context about why I'm sharing it today, and some of those transparent conversations, because people want to know that you're human. Social media is not meant to be a monologue, it's meant to be a dialogue. So you want to have those conversations. What are some of those successful examples of personal branding that really stand out to you, or some that you've worked with?
So I'm going to do one that's a little controversial, and it's Kim Kardashian and the whole Kardashian clan. For all of their thoughts that people have about them, I have to say that Kris Jenner, their mom, is the absolute best person at branding. And you talked about sometimes we're creative out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And she really took that. And, Kim Kardashian, they just had a class at Harvard built solely on the company Skims. And she went to speak at the business school there. And, it's really fascinating how they can just pick up on things and just go with it. Now, obviously now they have all the reputation, the names and all that stuff behind it. But even in the beginning, it's just fascinating to me. The one that I'm most proud of recently is probably the Memphis Rebounders. And that whole organization, which we can talk about in a little bit, but I took over last June and tried to create a really strong brand around getting the hype up again about Memphis basketball, and incorporating more of the fans and things like that, and incorporating prior players, which was really important. And so that was really, for me, it was interesting to be able to take something that I'm really passionate about and love, and create it more to get more fans engaged with that.
That's a unique. Talk a little bit more about, for those that may not be aware, what the Memphis Rebounders are.
So it's the official booster club for the University of Memphis men's basketball team in Coach Hardaway. I had never heard of them when I was in school back in the day. And when I moved back to Memphis, you talk about networking and trying to connect with the community. I saw them. I moved back in fall of 2020, and I was Googling some stuff, and I came across it, and I was like, I don't know if I should join this. I think it's a lot of senior citizens. Why should I pay money to go and, network with senior citizens? And one of my friends, he said, yeah, but you'll really stand out if you do. And I just decided, I saw that Marvin White was the new president of the Rebounders. He's been on Memphis Leadership Memphis, and works for FedEx, and a fraternity brother of Coach Hardaway's. And so I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and give it a try. And I did. And I found my people. They're just it's such a diverse group of individuals in the Memphis community. Memphis is a basketball city. And so, our fun kind of ends. We're all about raising the money to help with, team, whatever the team needs. We just purchased 2 Pelotons for them because their equipment was really worn out. And we just spent $125,000 renovating the locker room at the FedEx Forum. So those are some of the things that, we do, and you just feel a part of the team. So I get really excited about that. That's the fun part.
That is exciting too, because the Boosters Club, like, you're seriously, I mean, it's in the name, you're boosting the
Yes,
morale of the team, you're boosting the comfortability of them to be able to shine in what they do best. And so whether you're an alum or passionate about the Memphis men's basketball team, like, it's a great thing to be a part of. And it's super cool to see that once again, you're sort of using your skills base
yes,
to then go in and brand it to something that is this potential to increase fan engagement, which is really important. And also to highlight some previous players, which is another touch point that people, they remember those high points, and to be able to talk to them and
we
interact with
do.
them is a lot of fun.
And
Yeah,
can I
yeah,
add one thing to that?
please do.
The most enlightening part was last summer. Chris Gardner, who played in the 90s when I was in school, he became the new head coach, I believe, for I think it's Craigmont High School. And I only saw one blurb about it in the news media. That was it. Small little blurb. And I couldn't believe the other news media people were not taking that story and going with it. And so I made a post about him on our Instagram and Facebook and Twitter accounts. And I used a picture from him back when he was playing. And it just blew up. I mean, it went viral in Memphis. And he saw it and reached out and told us how much he appreciated that post and how much he loved all the fans were commenting and everything, and he wanted to be more involved with us. And so I saw from that point on that, it's important to give love to our current team, but we also have to remember the legacy of the players that went before, and bring that in as well. And that's the same for any brand. You have to remember the previous years, and sometimes, connect with that as well.
Yeah, and celebrate those that got you to where you are today. So that's great advice for both, if you're a sports fan or in your personal brand and professional brand as well. Let's switch gears a little bit to LinkedIn, which to me is one of the most still untapped social media
Yes, I
mediums.
totally
And
agree.
like I said, where we met, there's over 700 million users on LinkedIn, but less than 10% actually post monthly. So you have this huge benefit to the algorithms for people to see your content. What are some of the benefits of having a strong LinkedIn profile, and how can individuals optimize their profile to stand out?
Okay, so the advantages is what you just said. If you have an outstanding profile, which includes posting on a regular basis, you have more chances of being seen by all these individuals. I teach, and I still do for a nonprofit out of Houston. I teach job search classes, and to mid-level people with master's degrees, PhDs, doesn't matter how smart anybody is, they're terrified to write posts on LinkedIn. And I am just baffled by that. But what I've seen over and over and over again is if you put the energy into it, people are too scared to even comment. That's what I see a lot of times. They won't even comment, much less post. But if you have a stellar brand and you can get people to look at your LinkedIn profile, they're going to be more engaged with you, because you have to remember, out of sight is out of mind. And if you want a job, if you want a promotion, if you're trying to network, you have to be seen. And it's so easy to be seen on LinkedIn because nobody really wants to participate in the way of posting. And so the algorithm is always in your favor. And so having a good, strong brand on there visually lets you kind of pull it all in as well.
Great points. And even my career here at City Current was because of social media and me posting on my personal brand, and Jeremy, our CEO, seeing the work that I was doing there. My previous work in the nonprofit sector in higher education was also because of social media. So I mean, there's huge power in mirroring personal branding and social media and meshing that together. Now, talk about any industry specific tips you'd give for LinkedIn effectively. How can professionals in different fields really leverage its platform to build and network with people?
So there's a yes and a no to that. So it's really important that you connect with people in your industry. But the one thing I'm always going to say is that you should also connect with as many people that are not in your industry, because more times than not, your next referral, your next job offer, your next whatever that is, will come from somebody that knew you. And so, it's great to have as many industry specific people in your network, but you need so many more people because they know people in your industry. And so, what I see is people want to constrict the number of people they connect with because they're like, well, they're not in my industry. Why do I need them? And I want to say you need everybody because everybody knows everybody. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to that, being industry specific and talking about things that are going on in your industry.
Very well said. Now, for someone who's just starting to build their presence on LinkedIn, what advice do you have for them? How can they work with you to establish a strong personal brand and achieve their goals?
So first thing is you just need to go ahead and get an account. And then things like, yes, have a profile picture, build out your skeleton list of all the jobs that you've had, start thinking about, what value you bring, what are 3 to 5 big accomplishments or small accomplishments that you want to highlight, and think about what your value is. To work with me right now, I have a LinkedIn profile audit special going on that you can, I'll do a Zoom call with you for 30 minutes. We'll go through your profile. I'll give you specific action items of how to increase certain areas, how to add things that maybe you need to take out, and how to really turn that into a look when somebody comes to your profile. It looks like what you do, because a lot of times I go to people's profile, I see what it says they do, but when I look at it, I'm like, I don't know what you do, and we can still, I have the trucking company in my work experience, but you're never going to see that because I've got everything top heavy with what I want to lead with. It's still there. I'm not going to hide that because it's a huge part of who I am, but I can talk about how it works with everything else, but I'm always going to be top heavy with the about section, with the header area. That's really going to lead your brand.
And LinkedIn is a powerhouse when it comes to optimizing with keywords and
Yes.
phrases, and especially as you continue to job seek or expand your career, whether you are looking for a new job or you have recruiters looking for you. And so that works in your favor to optimize your LinkedIn profile. If someone wants to work with you and jump on that Zoom for a LinkedIn audit or work with you with their either personal brand or company, talk about, you do work with some nonprofits and
Yes.
foundation as well. So talk about that, the services that you offer, and then how people can connect with you to book your services.
So I do offer social media, so I can take over your social media accounts and post for you, create the visual images and the text. I can also work with businesses or individuals and help them create what they want to post out every month, and kind of help them come up with a schedule, so I can do consulting in that way. So if you want to contact me, you can go to my LinkedIn profile, Sandy Adams Studio, and connect with me right there. Or you can email me at sandy@sandy-adams.com.
Awesome. Well, Sandy, thank you for providing some really great tips for personal branding, LinkedIn, and community calling cards, and being passionate about personal branding and how it leverages your career, and it really amplifies everything that you do. Sandy, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.